Alright guys, today we're going to do one-step inequalities with multiplying and dividing. These are a lot like one-step equations, except they're not quite. You have multiple solutions instead of just one, but you do follow the same rules as far as inverse operations go. So, we started yesterday with adding and subtracting. Today we're moving on. One of the biggest things you need to remember are the turnaround rules, and just to review from yesterday, the first turnaround rule that we did was if the x is on the right side of the inequality sign, you need to turn the whole thing around. And today we're going to learn a second turnaround rule, and that's dealing with negative coefficients. If you don't remember what a coefficient is, it's a number that's standing right next to x, like this 2 right here, or that 3, or that 3. That's also a coefficient. Okay, so let's go over this. So this first one is, if you recall, well, actually, let me go over this. We have the greater than or less than an open circle, greater than or equal to or less than or equal to a closed circle when you're graphing. And this one, we have 3 times x. 3x is less than or equal to 9. We're going to divide by 3 on both sides, just like you would with a one-step equation. And then x will be less than or equal to 3. To graph that, all we have to do is, remember, you make this into a little arrow. The arrow is pointing to the left. So that means we're going to do a closed circle because it's less than or equal to at 3. And the arrow points to the left. Okay. Here we have division. Okay. And when I say dividing, I mean it's initially dividing. The way we undo that, if you recall, is we multiply both sides by positive 3. So on this one, I'm going to do times 3. That cancels. And then times 3 here, right? And so 1 times 3 is 3. And we have, again, x is less than or equal to positive 3. Again, we make our arrow. It's pointing, it's less than or equal to, so it's going to be an arrow going that way. So we're going to do a closed circle at 3, and my arrow points to the left. And what that means is that all numbers 3 and less than 3 satisfy this, because any of these numbers, when divided by 3, are less than or equal to 1. That's a bit more of a complicated way of thinking about it, but for right now, just try to remember the rules. Okay, the second thing is the turnaround rule that we learned yesterday, where our x term is on the right side. So what we need to do first is we need to turn this whole thing around. So it says 6 is less than 3x. The mouth is facing 3x, so we want it to face 3x again. So we'll write 3x greater than 6. 6 is less than 3x is the same thing as saying 3x is greater than 6, okay? Now we can go about solving it. So if I divide through, it's 3 times x, divide through by 3, then x is then greater than 2. Greater than or less than means an open circle at 2. My arrow is pointing to the right. I make an arrow, translate it over there. There you go. So that's one turnaround rule. Now a new turnaround rule today is if the coefficient is negative, you have to turn just the sign around, not the whole thing around, just the sign, okay? So for instance, with this one right here, number 3, it says negative 2x. The coefficient is negative. That means we need to go ahead and, well, we'll wait to turn the sign around. We're going to go ahead and divide by negative 2 on both sides. And then in our answer, I'm going to go ahead and flip this. Flip it around till it faces the other side. So it was less than or equal to, now it's greater than or equal to. And it's going to be x, again, 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Okay? So now we're going to graph it. Again, it's going to be a closed circle at negative 2. I make my arrow. It's pointing to the right. It goes that way. And what that means is that any number that negative 2 or greater than negative 2 will make this inequality true. Now, if you have any other number that's negative that's not a coefficient, doesn't do anything to it, okay? For instance, let me do another one right here. say if I had 2x is, I'll just do a similar problem, less than or equal to -4, okay? This being right here, this doesn't do anything, okay? This doesn't change the direction of the sign. It's only if your coefficient is that. So again, we divide through, x is less than or equal to -2. Yeah, one while they're graphing it, okay? There are a couple of cases where you might have to turn it around twice, where you would have a negative coefficient that's also on the right side. So I'll do one of those. This is just like class. You have to wait for me to erase and everything. Okay, so I'll use blue. Say I had, let's do this be number 5, I think. Let's see here. 3 is less than negative, let's do -3x, okay? There are 2 turnaround rules here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the whole thing around because to get my x on the left side instead of the right side. So the first thing that you need to see is this. So it's 3 is less than, the mouth is facing the x term, so it's going to be, we turn that around so it's also facing the x term. So it's going to be -3x. Again, it's facing it is greater than 3, okay? Now the second turnaround rule comes after we go ahead and divide. So our coefficient's negative, so that means that the sign will flip now. Let me pick my third color here. I'm going to divide both sides by -3. Okay, the sign is facing this way, it's going to flip and face the other way. So it's from this to this. -3 divided by -3, that cancels out. 3 divided by -3 is -1. Okay, to graph it, we have an open circle at -1, see 0, -2, and might make an arrow, it's pointing to the left. Okay, so remember your 2 turnaround rules. If you have both turnaround rules, you want to do the one where you flip the first one where you flip the whole thing around. If your x is on the right side, then you want to deal with your second turnaround rule. All right, that's it. Take notes.